Welcome in, Loons fans, to another edition of the Matchday Preview. Jonathan Harrison here again, as usual, alongside Manny Lagos. Manny, how we doing today before we introduce our special guest for the show?
A little bit like last week. You know, you had that kind of opening kind of vibe of excitement of MLS, that it's back, that it's really happened after a long preseason, guys ready to go. You get through that game, and then now it's a home opener week.
Yeah.
So there's some great energy at training, some great energy in the front office. Obviously, I did a spot this morning on the news for Allianz Field, which I always get excited to go there. So yes, doing really well. Excited for the weekend. The weather, unbelievably nice this week, so that field should play pretty well this weekend.
Yeah, looking forward to it. And introducing our special guest, a face and voice many Loons fans will know very well, Kyndra de St. Aubin, joining the show. I think this is your first appearance on this version of the Matchday Preview. Kyndra, how are we doing after week one of Major League Soccer action?
Well, I'm about the same as Manny. I was lucky enough to be able to catch for sure the first half of the Minnesota United game before I had to head to my game, and then caught the tail end of it. But just a great weekend of games, a lot of energy around the 30th season for the league. And it was fun to be able to stream so many Coachella games before, the regular season kicked off. So then you're like really getting warmed up for it, although I was jealous of the Palm Springs and the sunshine. But ready for the home opener this weekend. I'm excited. I was at training a couple days ago up in Blaine. So yeah, ready to go. It should be good.
I know MLS, the PR staff there, they like to tweet out who's going where, but I'm going to spoil it now. You are at the game this weekend, so many Loons fans will be able to listen to your commentary this weekend. Looking forward to that on the call. Kyndra, you were jumping into the MLS action from week one, jumping right in. You were at Austin, Sporting Kansas City. Austin won, Sporting Kansas City 0. You got to see the new look attack for Austin. What were your takeaways from that?
I was talking to head coach Eric Ramsey just about this the other day after training. I think Austin's going to be really good this year. I mean, they've got some solid pieces. We all know that the league can be a crapshoot on any given day, but compared to what they were, and this is not a knock on Josh Wolf, but Nico Estevez, and I think some of the tools that he's been given to utilize and some of the freedom he's allowing them to play with, and not all their pieces were even playing yet in that match because of just arriving late and getting fit and getting energy, making sure they're ready to go so there's no injuries. But I think they're going to be really good. I think Sporting Kansas City might struggle again this year, and I love Peter Vermees, and Manny knows him well. He's been around a long time, but he's, I think it's going to be a tough slog again for them this year. And again, they had come off that midweek game against Miami at home, and it was like -7. So they knew they had to turn around and play Miami again on Tuesday. Or no, did they just play No, that was Tuesday. I'm giving all my CONCACAF Champions Cups games mixed up. But I think it's gonna be a tough go for Sporting Kansas City and Joveljic, who is going to be their number 9 this year, and he doesn't have Paintsel and Peck alongside him, providing some service. So great game, great atmosphere. The weather was awful. It was like 35 and sleeting.
In Austin?
In Austin, it was terrible. It was terrible. But I will tell you, the people show up just like they will in Minnesota, regardless of the weather. They have a good fan base there. So it was a good way to get things started. I can't complain.
I like it, Kyndra. I'm welcoming you to the show by playing a little bit of I'm not sure about Austin yet. I think, for me, a lot of money spent. There's no doubt. I mean, they have set an intention that they want to spend with the big boys in the West. I think that the big one will be, will the Brandon Vasquez investment pay off? And I think I'm going to hold there personally. I mean, I respect the moves and really impressed with, some of the stuff they've done. I think the Vasquez one is one where I'm still uncertain whether that's where you can create the focal point of your offense and be, kind of dominant in the West. But we'll see. Like I said, that's a young player, or not a young player, it's a player who's proved a lot of people wrong. They've really invested a lot of money into him.
Well, I will say, though, the one guy that they don't have yet is that Mirto Uzuni. He didn't play in that match, and he's got a ridiculous amount of swagger, like borderline cocky, right? You got to ride that as a DP with that kind of attitude. You have to ride that fine line. And I agree with you on Vasquez. I think every season he's been sort of up and down, when he was with Cincinnati and then obviously going to Liga MX. Like, you don't know which striker you're going to get. He's excited to be back in the league. But I think Uzuni might be the thing that gets them over that hump, because I don't think it is. And they want to play as a 2-forward system with the two of them. And Uzuni's just like, I'm here to break records. I'm here to break records. It was like the only thing he kept saying. So we'll see. We'll see if that happens.
Yeah, should be exciting times there. Little, as you said, Kyndra, a little struggle for Kansas City off the bat here. 3 competitive games, just 1 goal in those games. So we'll see how, if Peter Vermees can turn that around. Plenty of other action across the league. And Manny, I know we talked about last week, kind of making predictions for the season in San Diego, making me eat my words when I suggested to them as Wooden Spoon getting a 2-0 win on Sunday Night Soccer, the first ever edition of that, over the LA Galaxy in LA. What a game and result for San Diego. Just an impressive performance from them.
Yeah, it was. I mean, the San Diegans, I think I think they, the credit to them. Not only this smash and grab, they actually won the game. They played really well. They were solid. They created chances in both halves, and I think it wore on the Galaxy that it's obvious that they're without some key players, and they have to retool no matter what in terms of how they're going to play based on last year, because Ricky Puig won't be back to at least till August, but there is a side of me that says that is not always a short-term injury where you're back in 6 to 8 months. Typically, that to me means more of like a 10 to 14 months, and his body type usually add a couple months just based on, you got to get some of that muscle mass back, and he's a pretty slight guy, but it looks dysfunctional for the Galaxy. Again, they really had an amazing year last year, and that was a different team out there on Saturday.
Do you think there should be Do you think there should be concerns, Kyndra, for the Galaxy early on? Because as Manny said, they looked a little dysfunctional. It didn't look like the Galaxy we saw at the end of last season. Yes, no Ricky Puig, no Joseph Paintsel. Obviously, Dejan Jovelic is gone. So obviously some changes up in the attack, but it didn't look like the confident Galaxy side that we saw at the end of last season.
Well, I don't know where you guys picked him in your sort of preseason polls. And to be honest, I don't remember exactly where I picked them, but I know I didn't pick them to be near the top because I felt like Ricky Puig was going to be he's that much of a difference. And the other pieces that you talked about, Paintsel and Peck, that is a key piece of this offense. And then not having Jovelic. That's why Jovelic had like the career year that he did, is because of the attention, the wingers, the space that they found and the attention they drew, and this services into the box to find Jovelic up top. So I was concerned about the Galaxy coming in before, but I was a little surprised that, and again, you can't, they knew that Puig was going to miss this year, most of this year, because of when the injury happened. But at the same time, I mean, Greg Vanney spent the last 2 years rebuilding this team, and they finally got this team to where they wanted it. And now it kind of feels like they've taken those steps back. I mean, I was concerned about the Galaxy coming in. I'm still concerned about the Galaxy. And Royce didn't look like, I don't know. I don't know what the expectation is for him, but I guess it was higher than what I saw in that game for me. And Christian Ramirez, our old friend Christian Ramirez, who we know can score goals. Maybe it's just going to take a little time, but there's some pressure on him to kind of fill the shoes of what Jovelic did. And I don't know. The Galaxy, I think it might be a little bit of a rough start, maybe till they tweak the system a little bit and get things going. But good for San Diego to get off to that start. What a spoiler, though, for the Galaxy, coming off the championship, coming off the win, and then getting beat like that by the expansion team. And Manny's right. It wasn't a smash and grab. It was like it was a proper win. It wasn't a freak thing, and we can talk about playing out of the back later. I mean, that's like a whole nother podcast because that's a whole other theme. It was across the league on opening weekend.
I really also just, it was really exciting. California has really shown a pathway of loving soccer in this country, and adding another city in California to the league. I think it's great. Like I said, it was really cool. It's cool every time there's a new expansion team. There's a lot of great energy. You saw the fans at the stadium experience that. We've had that experience back in 2017 in terms of just the newness of all of it. So it was a side of me that really, enjoyed just them in the game, and then certainly getting a tough win, or not, maybe a better opponent than we realized. But you still have to step on the field and get the result, which they did.
Jonathan, is that going to be the trip? Maybe you're like, hey, can we take the radio crew on the San Diego away trip? I'll hit that one up. I'll pop on the charter for that one.
That'd be great. Going out to San Diego, one of my favorite spots in the United States, just going out there and nice 70 degree and sunny all the time. That'd be amazing, especially early on in the season. other teams that got off to flying starts, San Jose, Bruce Arena, flying off the bat here. 4-0 win over Real Salt Lake. Concerns for Real Salt Lake, or is this just Bruce Arena doing Bruce Arena things, Kyndra?
Well, first of all, credit to Bruce Arena and whatever he's got going on there. And I know it's only game one, right? But
Right.
the energy that you could even feel, or I felt from the stadium, just listening to it and watching it, I felt like there was a different vibe. Now, is it sustainable with the group that he has? He's brought in a ton of guys that he's familiar with, some from New England Revolution, and shipped some out, which I don't know, how that's going to pan out. I mean, Jackson Yule was sort of like a poster boy almost for San Jose the last few years in the midfield or in the back line, but he's got his own way of doing things. Bruce Arena, it seems like everywhere he's gone, he's kind of found a way. But it remains to be seen. And Real Salt Lake is a team that's not somebody I was expecting them to walk over and score those kinds of goals, and Real Salt Lake to be kind of not show up the way they did. So I'm excited for San Jose, the fan base there, and anybody who's been a part of that organization. It feels like the coaching carousel has been nonstop. And I think the fan base there, much like Manny's talking about Southern California, LA, San Diego, there's a real soccer vibe in Northern California. Manny, you lived it. So hopefully they're on the right track. But I'm not worried about Real Salt Lake and Pablo Mastroeni, but at the same time, I didn't expect that result on opening day.
Yeah, I think it took me by surprise that they.
I don't think you can worry about any club till about game 5, ever. Really. Like, no, I really don't. I think this is my thing where you really get to know where you are, even if you lose all 4 games. You have a lot of time to build into what you want to do. And if you win the 4 games, it's sometimes even harder because now you have to really manage how do you get your team better and how to make sure your team's improving week by week. But certainly this week 1, that storyline of Bruce winning and winning big in a market that has been just dying for something, it really is fun to talk about after week 1. There's no doubt about it. And there's no doubt that, we're talking about the most iconic, most wins in MLS history, winning this game and trying to help them get out of something. It's got to feel good for San Jose to have a week and a start like that. It probably gives them some really good excitement, but I always say it is just week 1. We are in the early stages of what that team's going to be and how they're going to go about competing in this league.
Manny, you're getting this all wrong. You have to be worried. You have to have concerns after week 1. You have to overreact after week 1. That's how media works, isn't it?
That's how we make our living in media.
Then fine, we'll talk about the loss last night, RSL against Herediano. Now that's a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, yes. They're now knocked out of a major competition against an opponent that they probably should have taken care of. That hits hard for the week, losing 4-0 and then also getting knocked out of the CONCACAF Champions League. It's a tough week for them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I was more surprised that they gave up 4 goals considering how pretty solid they were defensively, especially under Pablo Mastroeni last year. Kind of shocked me that they gave up 4 goals. Other results across the league that kind of took people by surprise. Vancouver 4, Portland 1 in Portland. So this is 2 straight games for Vancouver and Portland, where Vancouver outscores Portland in Portland 9-1 over those 2 games. Jaden Nelson, holy wheels, man. Him on that breakaway, just burning past everybody, was one of the highlights of the weekend for me. Just looking up and seeing him fly past everybody. That kid has some wheels, Manny.
Yeah, he had a great game. It was obviously there was a red card that really kind of affected the game, and in terms of like how Portland was going to navigate getting a result at home in their opener. But Jaden Nelson was outstanding. If anybody wants to go watch the highlights, go do it, because you were right. He had just one of those days where he was just gliding by guys, creating goals. I think he had a goal and 3 assists in the game, maybe. Looked outstanding. And I think for Portland, they just moved to Vander. I think they're still trying to navigate what their identity is going to be post Vander. And they got caught with a Vancouver team that knows how to go into Portland now and score some goals.
Well, and to be honest, I miss kind of seeing Vanni Sartini on the Vancouver sideline. I mean, I would have thoroughly enjoyed his celebration on the sideline and the chill of the Portland air after that victory. He took those Cascadia Cups pretty seriously. So I'm excited about Vancouver. I was excited about them at the end of last year. I was so bummed that Sartini wasn't back, and we'll see what they look like throughout this season. But yeah, I don't know. Portland to me is a little inconsistent, and I agree. Trying to figure out without Evander now, Rodriguez is like supposed to be the guy. Can he manage being the guy that will sort of remain to be seen? But I think Evander is going to be a big miss for them in midfield and what he did. Even though he left on unhappy terms, he kind of burned some bridges. More power to Cincinnati because I think they got a good one there.
Yeah, I think you guys are right. I think that Jaden Nelson just threw a loop. If we thought about talking about last weekend in Vancouver, obviously Ryan Gold has started off awesome, looks great. And for me, Brian White's probably the best American forward in the league. I think he really is that good. And so to start off with this other kid, which kind of came out of the blue and had a great game, they look very solid early on, not just in the league play. They also look solid in the CONCACAF, going to Saprissa. I know they got a late goal against them, but they fought and they have something. I wouldn't be surprised if they take Saprissa. Is it tonight? Maybe their CONCACAF.
I think so. Yeah.
I don't know. What day is it?
Yeah, they have an away goal. I know it's Thursday, barely.
Yeah, it's tonight. Vancouver, Saprissa tonight at 9
I
p.m.
think they'll win that game pretty handily.
Yeah. Moving over to the Eastern Conference side. And by the way, getting to be able to watch a ton of these games, not just because Minnesota was bumped up to the 2:30 game or the 3:30 game, but being able to watch all these games as they were spread out a little bit better than they have been in years past was excellent work. Well done by the schedule makers and Apple TV, making that happen, putting in various different windows. Was excellent to be able to watch on opening weekend a bunch of different teams and kind of get a feel for the rest of the league.
Jonathan, somewhat well done.
Somewhat well done.
We need a Friday night game.
Yes, that is agreed.
We need a Friday night game. We need a couple games to spread it out more Saturday. Kyndra just said it. We finally got to watch other games besides the teams that we work and play for. And then we need a couple games Sunday. So we just got to keep that going. Let's keep spreading it out as much soccer as possible.
I do miss Friday night soccer because those games were always chaotic, and we had a couple at the end of last season. Bring those back for sure. Moving to the Eastern Conference side, we mentioned a red card altering a game. An early red card for Inter Miami changes things in that one. A 2-2 draw for Miami in their season opener against New York City FC. Your takeaways from what we saw from Inter Miami, Manny?
Just messy again. I'm trying not to talk about it. No, he's just.
Hey, we waited until 20 minutes into the show this time. I think we're okay.
Yeah. No, he's just coming so fit. He's looked so sharp. In the CONCACAF series, he looked great, scoring great goals, bangers. And then, he gets the red card, and they really handled it pretty well. It's a lot different getting a red card in Miami than other places where it's hot and you get it early and you're asking guys to run. And, a couple guys on that team are in their mid to late 30s. And next thing you know, Messi's in the 99th minute, just making an amazing play to make sure they walk off the field to point. I think that was a win for Miami, if I'm being honest. I thought they really handled that adversity really well.
Yeah, absolutely. And them getting that goal after going down a man and fighting through so long. I would say that speaks ill of New York City FC allowing so much space in the back to allow that to happen, Kyndra.
Well, I think it doesn't matter sometimes, though, like what you do with the players that you have on the pitch. Well, exactly. I mean, trust me,
that's fair.
Well, if you
can't allow that to happen when you're up a man for that long.
I agree, but even watch the CONCACAF Champions Cup on Tuesday against Kansas City, and he takes that volley out of the air, and he's got 60 feet of space around him. I'm like, you can't leave him that open. But somebody could have been all over him and hanging on his back, and he might have done the exact same thing. But I agree with you. That is not something you can do. I'm more impressed with, like Manny said, and like you just said, fighting through that heat, a man down for that long, to not give up on the game. These are the best players in the world that have played at the highest level, and they want to win the opening game, the league game. I know they ended up with the draw, but I'm agree with Manny. I think it's a win in their mind. I think it's a huge disappointment if you're New York City to go on the road in Miami's opening night and not come away with 3 points in that game when they were down a man. To me, I think that would be the more of the storyline. But yeah, I mean, any chance you can watch Messi, especially I know you guys got him coming here in May, so that'll be fun. I haven't been given that game yet. I'm gonna vouch for it, but I brought my daughter's whole soccer team. We took their whole team in Vegas to Club America Miami.
Oh, nice.
Which was amazing, and the girls loved it. So I think anytime you can go see them in person, I would highly recommend it. But what a great come from behind draw for Miami, and a big disappointment, I would think, for New York City.
Kyndra, just knocked on wood because I want Messi continue playing well, stay healthy. But then I also want him to come here and hopefully we can surprise him a little bit with our Minnesotanness. So
What do you guys think of his haircut? It's kind of like a bowl cut. What's happening there?
He's going back to the longer hair look. That's the most dangerous
I
version
kind of
of
like
Messi.
it personally. I think he looks younger. Like I said,
He does look younger. That's what made me think of the bowl cut.
And again, if you watch that Kansas City CONCACAF series, he has been so sharp on the ball. He's been quick. He moves it quickly. He finds space. Again, we remind ourselves one of the reasons why Messi's becoming so wide open is Miami's team has got a lot more depth than I even think than last year. Not that they're going to get the same amount of points they did last year. That was amazing, but it's not just a one-trick pony, that team. They actually have some guys that move the ball and move you around in different spaces where he can now float into areas where he can find the space to do the stuff he does really well. So they've done a good job to start this season, at least from my eye test of these 3 games now. And Kyndra said a couple of these preseason games against a team like Club America, which is one of the better teams in this hemisphere as well, of really putting a flag down that along with Messi, Busquets has looked really good, that this is going to be a tough team to deal with in the league.
Well, and real quick, how about Messi's goal in the first game against Kansas City? I mean, it felt like -7 out there late in the game. Clearly, the guy thought he was going to take it with his left, and is a cheeky little turn, and then hits a perfect ball to the back post with his right. Like you just can't defend the guy. You give him one chance. They had one shot on goal the whole night, and that was it. And that was -7.
Yeah, that chest too as well, backing up, unbelievable. Yeah,
just incredible. But also, speaking of the game, the CONCACAF Champions Cup game this week that they had, how do you give Messi that much space? How do you allow him acres of space in your own box?
I just told you.
Yeah,
Miami's not just Messi. That's my point. Is that you can't, if you decide to put a lot of guys around Messi, other guys are going to hurt you. So the reality,
there was only, if I'm remembering correctly, and I'm probably not, but it felt like there was only one other guy forward, and Messi was just there, a late runner into the box, and he was allowed so much space. And like, okay, yeah, that's going in the goal. There's no chance of ever stopping this if you're going to give Messi that much space.
I love it, Jonathan. Man.
How many times though have you seen players that know they're going up against an incredible player and they back off because they don't want to get smoked? They don't get burned, and they're like afraid. They're like, if I back up a little farther, it won't look like I got beat so bad. I mean, I've done it in my lifetime, like where I'm like, oh God, this guy is gonna this person's gonna meg me. This person's gonna I'm gonna end up on some highlight reel meme for the wrong reasons. And I almost sadly, I mean, Messi's he'll make you look silly if you get too tight. I don't know. It's not the right way to defend. I'm just saying. I just wonder if that's the case.
No, I mean, I would say you could maybe, if you feel like you're really struggling, maybe you do go man mark them and the whole game. And, that's old school German soccer where you literally just take the guy, or Italian soccer, and he just runs around with him the whole game. And now it's a 10v10 game versus 11v11. My brain is not sure how that would work out, but at this point, and it's only early, but that might be an option. That might be an option way to deal with them. Because the only thing I say to you guys is it's similar to basketball and other things. The movement of everybody else creates the space for Messi to do that, or the play before the guy's running back, and now Messi can float into the spaces he wants to. And the one thing that he's brilliant at, he does kind of jog a lot, but he's assessing every single moment to build into the space. So if his team's not playing well, he won't get the ball in no good spots. That's the reality of this. That's why I kind of brought up. I don't think it's necessarily about him getting that wide open. To me, it's about the rest of the team right now is really playing and moving the ball in a way that he's allowed to get into spaces to have good moments for his team. So
okay, I got a quick question here based on that. Sorry, Jonathan, I didn't mean to take it, but Manny just sparked a thought in my brain. I don't think Eric Ramsey's going to play that way when Messi comes here. He's not going to man mark him, but if he did, which player would you guys each pick to put on him? Who'd be your guy?
Oh man,
Hassani.
Who?
Hassani.
Yeah,
that's good.
But do you think Hassani would be able to not want to get involved in the attack? I mean, that's the other thing, right? You got to pick somebody that you're willing to.
Wait, Kyndra, you just changed the tactics again. I just told you what the tactics were, and you were talking.
I know you're saying 10v10. Do you think Hassani would want to stay with him?
You don't do anything except for follow him around for 90 minutes. There's no attack. There's nothing else. No, but that's my point. You don't worry about the attack. He doesn't care. You're just going to 10v10 now for the rest of the team, and you're literally. And that's happened before. Like I said, there's a lot of people tried to deal with Diego Maradona back in the 80s that way, with mixed success. Like I said, I bring it up because, we are talking about the greatest player of all time. And now looking sharper than he did last year. So there's a reality here that like people are gonna have to figure out how to manage how awesome he is. But anyways, that's what I can't believe we talked this much about Messi already.
Hey, I think we're getting past our Messi meter of what Loons fans are outside of Inter Miami
but
fans are willing to listen.
We brought in Minnesota there. We brought in Minnesota.
Moving on to other games. Who had Columbus Chicago 4-2 as one of the games of the weekend? A very much overhauled Columbus side that looks very different from what they did before. Chicago coming in with a lot of hope and promise under Greg Berhalter. I don't think anybody had 4-2 on their bingo card this week, Kyndra, for that one.
I just need, this is where Kyndra already brought up very early on about playing out of the back. If there's one team that, is looking to revamp, looking to make the playoffs after missing a lot over the last 10 years, needs to think about how to make sure they don't give up soft goals, it is Chicago. Like, this is a game I got to watch. And again, I still think Chicago is going to have a good year and kind of come back. But this feels like it's just the reiteration of them creating situations for themselves where they get up 2-0, they look good, they look like was it 2? No, it was 1-0, 1-1, 2-1. But they're up twice. And they keep on kind of having these moments where I really think they need to like be a goldfish and say, we're not doing that anymore the rest of the year. Like, because that felt like a very Chicago of the past like 10 years for me kind of game. But it was exciting. Like I said, it was good to see Chicago. That the Bamba looked good. He created 2 of the goals. Our young kid Gutierrez had some nice finishes. So I think there's some pieces there. But I think Columbus at home made Chicago say, if you do any mistakes, we'll make you pay for it. And that is the Chicago of old. They can't be that way for the rest of the year if they really want to kind of turn this around and make the playoffs this year.
It's Berhalter. You think he's not gonna keep playing out of the back? Well, he's gonna die on that sword. I agree with you. But it's Greg Berhalter, right? I mean, he's gonna that was like nearly the death of him at the U.S. men's national team. And I'm not saying clearly that's not what got him fired or not renewed. But I was excited about Gutierrez because this kid, I couldn't tell who he was, what he was. He's always was lacking confidence with Shaqiri there. I don't think he was as good as a player Shaqiri was and is. I don't think he was good for Gutierrez. He didn't allow Gutierrez to grow and sort of take the reins. I was glad that he got the 2 goals. I thought that was great. I'm still not sold on Chicago, but I think there's some new life kind of breathed into them. And I think Berhalter is going to have a plan every day at training. And I'm not a knock on Frank Klopas, but Klopas is thrown into every situation known to man at the Chicago Fire, on a last minute notice. So it's just he's covered the gamut of what he needs to do there. So I think Berhalter will have a plan every day. He's got a lot on his plate, taking a hold of all the different roles. I'm excited for Chicago Fire fans if they are on the right track. And how about Diego Rossi? We know he's good, but without Cucho Hernandez, I don't know. Without Christian Ramirez, we'll see what Wilfred Nazi cooks up with this Columbus Crew team.
Any other notes before we move on to Minnesota LAFC and the recap there? Any other notes from the weekend of the first weekend?
Perfect segue, Jonathan, right now.
All right, let's hear it.
The last game in the East, Atlanta-Montreal.
Oh, yeah.
Great game. A lot of expected goals. That's our opponent. I thought they played really, really well. I thought they gave Atlanta, who, by the way, it's amazing. We kind of just overshoot it. 65,000 people.
Yeah.
That's
one of the biggest soccer crowds in the world.
Yeah, soccer crowds in the world. Our former player, Caden Clark, I thought he had a really good game. I thought he was dangerous. Obviously, he's coming here this weekend. So it was, I thought, one of the better games of the weekend. And I think the opponent we're playing, I thought had one of the better games, probably a little like us, without getting the result, which kind of adds a little dynamic to what's going to happen this weekend and what happened to us last weekend.
Yeah, and Emmanuel Latte-Lath not wasting any time getting on the score sheet, bagging a brace in his MLS debut, Kyndra. Just a exceptional debut for Atlanta, getting the 3-2 win and a brace from their new big money striker.
Yeah, and I think he kind of proved, I wouldn't say he proved me wrong, but I wasn't sure exactly what to expect from him in this league and with Atlanta. But I think that his willingness to sort of work not just off the ball, but to get open, and the way he scored those goals. I thought the header was, what you want to see from him. And he was, I think yeah, that was pretty ridiculous. But I think he's fully invested too, which is what you have to get from a lot of these players that come from overseas. And they seem invested at first and then not so much, as it goes along, as if their team loses or they're not getting the ball, they're not getting the goals. We've seen that a few times, but I think he seems pretty invested. I think Lojanice is still going to be really good, but I thought he had some moments where he was choosing to take it himself instead of pass the ball. So maybe trying to balance out some of the confidence and the egos in that group. But Montreal, I thought I've rewatched that game twice now, prepping for this weekend. And I think they're going to be really dangerous. And I listened to all the post-game conversations. I don't know. I'm not brushed up on my French yet. So I still need to find some more video in English, but I think
game in French, or you can do it in English.
Yeah, Spanish. I'm gonna just fluctuate in between all three languages I did take 6 years of Spanish. It doesn't help me out much, but yeah, I think Montreal looked good. Caden Clark looks revitalized in Montreal, so who knows what he'll look like when he's playing against Minnesota United. But yeah, I think it was a good game. It was fun to see, and I don't know what was your favorite player on Montreal? Like if you guys had to pick one guy, because we can talk about, and you guys probably won't see them again, right? You just play this Eastern Conference team once.
Yeah.
So
It'll be a couple
like
years
if you were
before
watching that game, was there a player that surprised you? Somebody that you didn't know? Somebody that you were kind of pleasantly surprised at maybe how they, I mean, Herbers is there now too. He went there from Chicago, but I thought their attack looked pretty fluid.
I mean, if you're asking me, like, my favorite, like, kind of looking player in old school players, Piet. Like,
yeah,
how he actually does it and gets around the field, and
it's the super tucking.
Yeah, he looks every game like, like, is that a men's league player or is that a third soccer player? But
yes.
To his credit, he's effective and he finds ways to plug up holes and move the ball, and he's been there forever. So that's probably like, like that's what reminds me of Montreal is him. So that's what I would say.
At Target, we're ready to cheer with the hometown fans and gear you up for an epic season. Whether watching from the stands or your living room, score big on game day with everything you need for the win. We're here to be your home field advantage at Target and Target.com.
As we move on into LAFC Minnesota, let's get our general thoughts. LAFC 1, Minnesota 0. Ibobisi scoring in the 78th minute on that one. Let's start off just general thoughts, broad thoughts on the game. Manny, I'll start with you, then Kyndra.
It really is. It starts with me trying to be bitter because it was such an opportunity. And one of those things where it was an opportunity because I thought, particularly the first half and even the first 25 to 35 minutes, we really played well. We were organized, we were structured, we were compact. We didn't allow them spaces in any dangerous areas. And then when we won it, we had some great moments where we went forward with energy, with conviction. And just, it's the old cliche, we didn't quite take our chances, or we just got really unlucky on one or two where I think we should have had a lead. And that's the reality of this is there's 90 minutes of soccer. And I think that was probably, now looking back, the game for us. But we didn't play bad the rest of the game. We played really solid. We just didn't quite have enough on the day after not taking those chances to figure out how to create a lot of chances in the second half, and maybe they either get a point or 3 points after they scored a pretty good goal.
Yeah. Kyndra?
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I watched that first half when I was in my hotel room in Austin, and it felt like you guys was right there, right? I mean, obviously Kelvin's ball that hits the inside of the post goes behind the goalie and does not go in or doesn't go off the goalie's back, like anything at that moment. But also when you look at Tani Oluwaseyi's opportunity, like that he should have probably put away, and I don't know that you'll see him miss one like that. I don't even remember what minute that was in, but it was very early in the game.
I think it's like 4.
Like inside 5 minutes, I believe. So, I just don't think he misses any of those very often. We saw him bag a couple of those in preseason. I know it's still preseason, but he's usually pretty precise in his finishing, that especially at that kind of range. But I thought Hassani had a great game. I thought Will played really well, which you need your midfield to really kind of lock it down against his team. I thought the press, I mean, LAFC was on their back foot for a good chunk of that first half, and they did not know what to do, and they did not know how to handle it. And then it's just capitalizing on those moments. And I'll tell you, when I was at training the other day, and Eric Ramsey had the team playing this drill where it was like 7v6, and they had a certain amount of time, where they had to score, and then the transition moment to find the midfielder and play out the other way. And so it's focusing on that pressure and that high press, but also defending it, and then also transition, like all the things that I'm sure he took from that LAFC game and that he wants to continue going forward. Unlucky is kind of my word. I thought Minnesota was the better team on the day, even though I missed a good chunk of the second half and then caught the end of it at the stadium. I thought it was unfortunate not to get at least a point on the road against that LAFC team in opening weekend.
Yeah,
but you have to be positive about it, right?
Yeah.
Like, because there was so many positives about it.
For sure.
A lot of good foundation for a first game. Like I said, that's why I get bittersweet. It's one of those ones you want the good foundation, but you also need the results because that's important. So, but ultimately, yeah, the team really. I can't quite say they put in a 90-minute performance though. Personally, like I said, I think the second half we didn't quite manage the same way we did in the first half, and that got us caught, and they kind of opened us up just a little bit.
Yeah, and I said this to Dan on the broadcast and the post-match show, is that despite the scoreline, despite the result, nothing that I saw on the field over that 90 minutes changed my mind about my preseason expectations and hopes for this club and what they can do this season. I went in expecting that they're going to compete near the top of the Western Conference based off of just the stability and the pieces they brought in and what we saw at the end of last year. I don't think that changed for me despite the scoreline. I mean, they came out, as you guys said, and really pressed the heck out of LAFC, and LAFC were really on their back foot, and Kelvin Yeboah hit the ground running again once again this season, just showing his skill and talent, and he was really good. 50-50 balls, winning those early on quite a bit. Early on in the match was really helpful for them to keep the pressure on LAFC. Unfortunately, the second half just was a different story, as you guys hinted at. It just, things changed for the Loons. LAFC built themselves up into that match throughout the end parts of that first half and really took over in the second half. As I said, Kelvin Yeboah standout for me. Kyndra, you said Will and Hassani. I think two big shout outs, Carlos Harvey and Banghuple Hlongwane, with what they did in, I guess, shutting down as much as you can Denny Bawanga on the afternoon. That was really well done from those two and really closing down Denny Bawanga on the afternoon, Kyndra.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And the tricky part there, right, is then you have Martinez on the other side, who is their young talent that is kind of growing into his own. I would not have picked Abobasi to score a banger like that in this game. If I was going to say who was going to score the goal for LAFC in this game, and I like Abobasi, but he's had his real ups and downs. And when he's lacking confidence, it's hard to get him going again. But I think he'll find some life in LA. But I think Carlos Harvey has been phenomenal for this team since he started in this position of sort of that right back-ish role, where he can also step into the midfield as more of a holding mid, which he's familiar with, and kind of drive forward with the ball. And that allows Bongi or whoever is playing on that side in front of him to a little bit more freedom to push up. I think it's kind of been a revelation for him in that position. But also, I mean, to be fair, I'm guessing that this starting 11 is going to look quite a bit different depending on injuries and who's available. And also, I wanted to ask you, Manny, like Robin, not getting the start. I know he may have, been out for a bit of preseason, but that's kind of a head scratcher for some people, why Robin wouldn't get the start, or where he fits now in this lineup with what is expected of Pereira and others.
Yeah, I mean, I think, the way we look at our team, and we've got some great unity. We've got a lot of good pieces. I think Robin obviously had some like not the full preseason. So I think that I probably wouldn't look into it too much. His qualities and touches are so important that he'll find his way to the field when he's 100% fit and healthy and ready to go. I would say overall, really I expect some lineup changes this week. I think for me, guys, if I'm I want to start off with really how well and probably the best we've ever played as a team and a unit in LA. FC at LAFC, excuse me.
Yeah.
And really, again, I think it was a group effort. I think there was really some good individual efforts. I would say defensively, Bongi and Joseph were very solid, and Bongi and Harvey were outstanding. But I also think that we have to put our hand up and say, Joseph had a little bit of an injury, which affected us going forward offensively, and that's why he was subbed out at halftime. I think that would have impacted us even playing better in that first half and really finding that goal for sure, just because we could have probably been a little bit more on top of them even more, not towards the end of the first half. I think they kind of won some balls. Kyndra mentioned it. Martinez was outstanding. He was probably my man of the match, actually, kind of floating by guys and really gave us some problems. But ultimately, our wingbacks need to find ways to get more on the offensive. They need to get forward. I mean, I don't know if we had any crosses, any shots from our wingbacks. So as good as Bongi was, and as good as Joe and Markanovic came in and did a great job in the second half, I think that's an key area that I would say that has to get better this weekend. We have to be more impactful, getting forward and getting them involved in the offensive patterns.
Off that note, how much of Bongi not getting too much forward this week was down to him kind of being cautious of Bouanga there on the transition, one of the most lethal transition players in this league? How much do you think that impacted his ability or drive to get forward this weekend?
Oh, I think the easy answer is probably a lot. The harder, maybe more honest answer is it doesn't matter. I mean, if we're going to be the team that we want to be, we have to get on the front foot a little bit more. We have to make sure we don't get pinned back in those second halves and figure out ways to get out and keep possession for a little bit longer, and then spring Bongi, and then spring that. And so, again, I'm bringing up small details of a really good game, so I almost feel a little guilty about it. But I also want to be honest. There were some areas that we could have had them, and we didn't quite in the second half move the ball as well as we could have. We didn't quite have the ability to get a couple 1-2s in the middle of the field to spring Bongi or for Joaquin, who had been doing a great job in preseason of really hitting those diagonal balls and getting us up the field for longer spells of possession. And that's where we ended up having a little bit longer to 8 to 10 minutes of defending that kind of led to the moment where we kind of had the turnover where they kind of opened us up for the goal.
You guys mentioned Josef Rosales getting injured. Eric Ramsey saying he's out for a couple weeks earlier this week. Kyndra, when you look at the lineup, when you look at what the Loons have to replace him, first question, who do you think comes in and slots in his place? Is it Markanic? Is it Padelford? And then two, how does that change what the Loons want to do and how they play out of the back like they have done with Josef Rosales on that left wing back role? How does that change how the Loons go forward?
Well, I think, first of all, Eric Ramsey is going to want to continue to keep sort of that general shape and that theme of how he wants to attack and how he wants to defend. And the other question for me is Diaz. I don't know what his situation is. I knew he was suspended for that last match, carrying over from this season before, but he played on the left side as a left-sided center back, but right-footed, which didn't go over so well in the very last game of the season. But in general, leading up to that, I think there were some huge benefits to that. I don't think you'll ever have a like-for-like change for Josef Rosales and what he's capable of doing and his pace and his willingness to get forward. I think Padelford is a great option. I think Markanic is an option as well. You mentioned both of those, but none of them are going to bring exactly what he does. They're going to be much more defensive and less so attacking. So maybe the more important piece is, who do you put in front of him? Right? If the left wing back is staying home a little bit more than going forward, who is the left winger or the attacking piece? I know Pereira likes to float out on that side a little bit, but who do you put on that side that can maybe be more offensive and less, tracking back defensively? I don't know if I think what's
going to happen, I don't think Eric's going to go with wingers. I think he's going to do the same with LA. I think, at least for this game, I think he's going to go back to the two forwards. I don't think he's going to have wingers in this game.
If you don't have a left wing back that's going, or whatever you want to call Rosales, and you stay in that same formation that he had, and Pereira likes to float in that left pocket of space, but he's not a winger and you want him to be more the 10, then how does that change the attacking player in front of him if you have a left back or left wing back that stays home more than attacks?
So I would say it really is your two forwards, hungry to run in behind, hungry to run the channel. It's to me, it's more than likely, given how the preseason went, that Markanovic will filter right in. And he did a pretty darn good job. And he had a lot of first team minutes in preseason. So I don't see that being a issue for Eric. I think he's very confident in Markanovic. It showed in preseason that it seems like, oh, this kid's got something. So my gut tells me that just like he did in LAFC when Joseph was hurt, Markonovich came in. I think he played well enough to get another go. To your point, I think just solving problems in terms of how we get the numbers forward, I think we got to make sure that those guys are running the channel so we get the numbers up the field. You mentioned Robin Lode. I think if he's on the field, he helps us get numbers forward more. So again, I think the bigger thing is, I don't think Eric saw enough to switch from these two forward systems of Tani and Yeboah yet. Yes, we didn't score, and yes, we didn't get the result, but I think he saw enough there that more than likely we're going to go with two forwards, which means that our wing backs could get pinned back a lot, but if our forwards get hungry and get the ball and get in the channels and move it, I think we have a chance of getting more numbers forward, particularly if Robin's on the field, because he likes to drift into those offensive spaces.
And he's reading my mind here. That was going to be my next question for you guys, is what you guys thought of the big talking point from the preseason games was the two forward system and how that looked. Kyndra, in the first 45 minutes that you were able to see and going back and watching it, what did you think of how Tanny and Kelvin paired up front and how that attacking shape looked for Minnesota in the first game of the season?
I like the two forward system with those two in particular. And I think we saw from Calvin last year since he arrived, clearly he has the goal scoring capabilities, but he also has the ability to check back and make the pass. I mean, how many balls, it's like he can slot them through perfectly, like almost like a deep lying forward or an attacking minded number 10, where he has the ability to play make and find his teammates. So if Taney wants to keep making that run in behind and Yeboah drops in a little bit deeper to draw out the defender or face up and make that pass to a through ball, I think that it works really well with those two and their personalities and their styles of play. They didn't get a goal from it, but plenty of opportunities and chances. So I would continue with that. My question is just then, right, when Taney goes away with the national team, do you still play with the two forward system, or what does that look like? I asked Eric that the other day, and not just like when Tanny goes away, but are you going to stick with the two forwards, and where does Robin maybe slide into that? Because we've seen him play the 9, we've seen him play as a withdrawn forward, whatever you call, like he can do just about anything. So I liked it. I liked how it looked. I just didn't get the goal, but I didn't see any negatives from it aside from that you didn't end up with the goal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jonathan. Sorry.
No, you go ahead.
No, I like looking at on paper and seeing those two and having teams look and say, ooh, there's some real energy, speed, quality. And so for me, I think it's important that we get more numbers forward. If we get Joaquin in better spots, like I said, if I'm looking at LAFC, I thought I was hoping he would be a little bit more impactful offensively in that game, and we couldn't quite get him the ball in good spots to then find Tani and Yeboah to have a few more chances than we had. Like I said, if there's one thing that we did really well in that game, I thought we really handled LAFC creating any tempo, creating chances, really kept it tight. Offensively, I thought we did a good job when we counterattacked, but I don't think we created a lot of chances and build up of run and play. So I'm looking forward to this weekend to see how we can get those numbers forward, get Joaquin, if it's Lode, if it's Asani, if it's whoever's in the midfield, getting more balls in good spots, and then also spring in whoever it be, Bangir, Markonovich. So we walk off the field now looking at a lot more offensive patterns than we probably had that game.
Yeah, should be exciting to see what they're able to do this Saturday against Montreal. And speaking of that, let's jump right in that. Unless you guys have any other last notes you want to get in about LAFC. Nope. All right, so let's move on to Montreal.
That was pretty quick. You didn't let us really say anything. You're like, nope,
well, you both shook your heads. For the people who are listening to the audio version, not watching the video version on YouTube, they both shook their heads, so we moved on.
By the way, can I just say one more thing?
Yeah.
LAFC, Giroud, he's still struggling.
Yeah.
Find goals, which is amazing. He was in beast mode right before he came to MLS at AC Milan scoring goals. So that's one that blows my mind. I think it's like maybe a couple goals in like 25 games. So it's a lot.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out, considering they have Aubin there, who I know, as Kyndra said, has had his ups and downs, but when he's playing well and when he's confident, he can be a pretty dangerous attacker, and he's got some pieces around him in LAFC to help out there. So it'll be interesting to see how they manage Giroud's not really coming off really well in MLS so far. Moving on to Montreal, coming into town this weekend off a 3-2 loss, as we mentioned earlier, in Atlanta. Good performance from them, similar to Minnesota. Good performance, just not getting the result. What are we expecting to see from Montreal? I know there's a bunch of storylines here to look at, including Caden Clark returning to Allianz Field. Just broad thoughts on Montreal and what we expect to see from them this weekend, Kyndra.
Well, I think it's going to be more of the same for Montreal. I mean, if they felt that confident in what they were doing going into Atlanta in front of 65,000 people and knowing the attackers that Atlanta was throwing at them, I think they shot themselves in the foot late, giving up that goal for the loss. And I think they felt clearly confident enough to come out in the second half and claw back in this game under circumstances where the crowd was pretty intense. I liked what they did attacking wise. I thought that some of the ticky tack, like combination play to build from the midfield off a turnover and to find their opportunities. I thought they looked like, I think it was Bryce Duke, Owusu, and Caden Clark that combined on one of the opportunities. And it was like they had been playing together for years, just the way you saw it sort of develop. So I think if they do some of that, Minnesota's going to have to be ready and on alert, especially through the midfield with some of that one-touch passing and finding that space and not getting caught in a transition moment. But I was impressed with what Montreal did. And I think Laurent Courtois is just, he's got this team playing in a way, and he did last year as well. And it was kind of a bummer the way they went out. But that's why you play the games, right? And against Atlanta. But I think at the end of the day, he's got this team kind of believing in what he's doing. And now it's just another year under him and his style, even with the new pieces. So I think it's going to be a great test for Minnesota United, and in particular, the back line, because of not knowing who's going to be in and available and some of the pieces that Eric has had to move around and maybe will have to move around in this upcoming match.
Manny?
I like a lot of Kyndra's assessment. I think but my first thing is make sure we don't get complacent about the foundation that we played in LAFC in terms of things we did really well in that game. Even on this show, we kind of talk about the things we didn't do well. My number one thing is take what we did and make sure that's the baseline of how we're going to play and how well we're going to play on Saturday. And then I think it's just kind of adding smaller things in. For me, I have stuff like getting more numbers forward, longer periods of possession we need to have throughout the game in certain key point times. Obviously, the cliche of taking our chances I mentioned. I think set pieces, I really want us to have an identity of us scoring some set piece goals in big games. And there's no bigger game than a home opener, I think, the start of season. And then potential lineup changes. We kind of mentioned Robin Lowe. We kind of mentioned that no matter what, Joseph's out. So, and by the way, we should have brought up Dugan. I apologize about LAFC. What a great first MLS start he had. Does he stay in the lineup? Does he go back to Ruben Diaz? Mm-hmm. Can't mention that. And then the second thing in terms of dealing with Montreal, what I got from Montreal against Atlanta, I have the word chaos, because their attack had speed and chaos, which was impressive. Atlanta had a hard time dealing with it, and I was really impressed with how fast and quick they got forward and got numbers forward. But I would flip it and say that chaos could be an advantage for us, because I don't think they're quite as disciplined defensively. I don't think their structure is for 90 minutes. So there is goals to be had, I think, in this game, as long as we are smart and organized and compact at the right times, because I do think they'll get stretched. And I do think there'll be spaces a little bit differently than the LAFC to get chances, to get goals, and to, get off the field with 3 points.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how these two styles go up against each other, because you look at how Montreal played last year, they tended to favor possession. Minnesota under Eric Ramsey doesn't really... I mean, they'll absorb the pressure and hit on the counterattack because they've got the pieces for it. So it'd be certainly interesting to see that. Caden Clark, that's the big storyline for this weekend. Former Loon was traded there last year and really hit the ground running in those several games that he was there. What are we expecting, and how do we see him lining up for Montreal this weekend, Kyndra?
Well, first of all, I think Caden Clark just strikes me as the personality that he's going to have a point to prove. That just seems like his style, which I think most guys are when they come back and play a club that traded him away, or especially when it's your hometown and you're no longer. Now, I do think it was the best move possible for Caden Clark. I mean, I remember talking to Kyle last year about this and just saying like, hey, it's the best move for us and it's the best move for him. He was playing in a kind of an outside back role, which I don't think is his destined position. He's bounced around a lot, even as a young player, between Red Bulls and Leipzig. And I think this was a good move for him and a good fit. So more power to him for finding success and getting some goals. I think he had 4 goals maybe last year in the time that he was with Montreal in that short bit. So I expect him to have a point to prove, but for me, it's also about for him, not letting that get too much in your head. Don't let that overtake you, because even when he was here with Minnesota, I thought there were moments where, he needed to make the pass and he's taken the shot because he's constantly trying to prove his worth on the pitch and be a value instead of just playing the smart, simple ball. So I think he'll have a good game. I think he'll get the start in similar position that he did against Atlanta. And I think that attack is going to be lethal, but I think it should be a fun one. And I'm sure his family will be out in full force in their Montreal Caden Clark jerseys.
Manny?
My viewpoint is, we have a young kid that has come from Minnesota. He's worn our badge. So like I said, I support. I hope he does really well. It didn't quite work, wasn't quite the right fit, but his journey has been amazing. Has a lot of highs that he should remember as a young player. Has had some lows where he's had to find some adversity. And I wish him the best. I hope we get the best version of him against us because I want the best game possible for us, but I also want to root for Minnesotans. And I want us to show what we can do against people when they play their best. So ultimately, he did play well last week. So to Kyndra's point, that should be a special night for him to get a start against his former team.
When you're looking at the players for Minnesota coming up this Saturday, and you're looking at their performances they had last Saturday against LAFC, who needs to improve off of what they did and showed in Los Angeles last week? Who needs to improve on that this week, Manny?
I don't know if improve's the right word. I think, again, it's unfair for someone like Tani, who I think does a lot of the running behind that people don't see to kind of even open up Kelvin. But I think it's exciting to see if those two can improve from 1 week to the next in terms of how they're going to kind of navigate this 2-forward system and show that this is something that could be really, really dangerous in the league. So I would just combine that. We want that 2-forward system to get even better and more impactful over 90 minutes, not just 45 to 55 minutes. And then I think just winning the midfield. I'm not going to give it to a player. I just want us to dominate and battle and win the midfield so we can spring Markonovic if he plays. We can spring Bongi if he plays. And that allows us to get numbers forward. So it's really, to me, it's taking everything we did really well, just upping it a notch to make sure we walk up with 3 points.
Kyndra, is there a player that sticks out to you?
Well, I would say the same with Manny, maybe not like improve, but just like the expectations for Joaquin are so high. And I just want to continue to see him get better because I think he has the real quality and ability to be that playmaker in a completely different way. Because he was always compared to, Reynoso when he came in, which is not a fair comparison because they're not the same player. They don't play the same way. Yeah. But I think that he had a rough go of it last year when he came, just because you're coming across, to a new country in the middle of the season and trying to fit in the expectations. So I wouldn't say improve, but I would say I'm just like looking forward to seeing him continue to grow in that role and the immense growth he already seems to have had in preseason and the confidence and the way they're utilizing him and where he's getting the ball. So I just want to continue to see him because I think he could be a real bright spot for this attack.
Looking forward to it. Good stuff from you guys this week. Any final notes before we sign off for the weekend? We'll be back next week, obviously, with the match day preview, previewing the next game for Minnesota United. Any final notes from either of you guys before signing off for the day?
My final note is just another year, amazing Allianz Field. It is March 1st when the game happens, hopefully in the low 30s, high 20s, and we'll have a great crowd. It's surreal. It's amazing that we have that many people coming out in our, it's not spring yet, our winter to watch outdoor soccer, which is awesome. It's going to be great. No matter what, it's always a special day, a special night when it's opening day.
Absolutely. Home opener this weekend. Kyndra will be on the call for Apple TV. Tune into that one, 7:30 p.m. for that. 7 p.m. pre-match show with Dan Terrar and myself over on 1500 ESPN, the Score North mobile app, and live.1500ESPN.com. Looking forward to bringing you the coverage for that one. And good stuff from you guys. Loons fans, thanks for tuning in. We'll talk to you next week with another edition of the Matchday Preview.